Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My sister and I had a weird dynamic. She was always the pretty one, the popular one, the one who got all the attention. I don't mean that in a bitter way, it's just how it was. She was homecoming queen material, while I was more of the band geek type. Different strengths, you know. I was fine with it most of the time. We got along okay, but there was always this unspoken competition between us that she seemed way more invested in than I was. When I was 15, she started dating this guy. She was 20, he was 24. At first, everything seemed normal. He was charming, had a decent job, and my parents liked him. My sister was absolutely head over heels. They'd been together for almost a year by the time this whole mess happened, and she was already talking about moving in together and all that serious stuff. My parents seemed thrilled about it too. They'd always been a little worried that my sister's high standards would keep her single forever, so they were relieved she'd found someone stable. My mom would make comments about how nice it would be to have grandbabies someday. My dad bonded with him over sports and cars. It was like he'd already become part of the family. I'll admit, I didn't pay much attention to him. He was just my sister's boyfriend, and I had my own teenage life to worry about. School, friends, trying to figure out what college I wanted to go to, the usual stuff. I'd see him at family dinners and he seemed fine. Normal. He'd ask me basic questions about school and my plans, the way adults do when they're trying to show interest but don't really care about the answer. Nothing that would make me think he was the kind of guy who would do what he did. Looking back now, there were maybe some small signs. The way he'd look at other women when my sister wasn't paying attention. How he'd make jokes that walked the line of being inappropriate. But I was 15. I didn't really pick up on that stuff back then. So we had this big family barbecue one summer weekend. My parents loved doing these things where they'd invite everyone over, fire up the grill, and people would hang out all day. There was always music playing, my dad making his famous ribs, and once the sun went down, the adults would start drinking more freely. The party had started around 2 p.m., and by the time this happened, it was probably around 9 p.m. I was hanging out with a couple of my friends who came along. We were off to the side, just talking and laughing about stupid stuff. People were pretty relaxed by this point in the evening. I was wearing this casual sundress, nothing fancy, just comfortable for the heat. Her boyfriend came over to where we were. I could tell he'd had a few drinks, not falling down drunk, but definitely tipsy. His face was a little flushed and his movements were loose. He started talking to us, being overly friendly, standing way too close to me. My friends and I exchanged looks, but didn't say anything. Then he put his arm around my shoulders. I tensed up, but tried to laugh it off because I didn't want to make a scene at a family event. He was saying something about how I was growing up so fast, which was already weird, but then he went too far. He actually reached down and slid his hand under my dress to grab my butt. I immediately pushed his hand away and stepped back. My heart was pounding. My friends saw it happen and their eyes went wide. He just laughed it off like it was some joke and walked away to get another drink. One of my friends asked if I was okay. The other one said that was really messed up. I felt sick. I didn't know what to do. I've always hated confrontation. Even thinking about saying something made my stomach turn. But this wasn't something I could just ignore. This was serious. He violated me at a family gathering, in front of my friends. Like it was nothing. I couldn't let that go. I spent maybe 20 minutes trying to convince myself to say something. My friends kept asking if I was going to tell someone. I knew I had to. So I found my sister. She was talking with some cousins, laughing about something. I pulled her aside and told her what happened. I thought she'd be upset, angry at him, protective of me. We're sisters, right? Instead, she turned on me. She immediately said he would never do that. Her voice got defensive right away. I insisted that he did and that I wasn't making it up. Then she accused me of being jealous of her, saying I was jealous that she had a boyfriend and I didn't. I told her that wasn't what this was about at all. She kept going, claiming I just wanted attention and couldn't stand that for once something good was happening to her instead of me. I asked her when I had ever gotten more attention than her, but she wasn't listening. She was getting louder now. Then she said, he would never do something like that, especially not to someone like me. That last part hit me like a punch to the gut. Someone like me. Like I wasn't pretty enough or worthy enough for him to even look at that way. Like the very idea was so absurd that I must be lying, and I just stood there. My own sister was calling me a liar and insulting me to defend a guy who assaulted me. I was hurt. Really hurt. But I was also angry. If she wasn't going to believe me with just my word, fine, I get proof. I went back to where my friends were and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking a little, but I typed out a simple text to him. I asked if he wanted to hang out that night. My friends watched me do it. One of them asked what I was doing. I told them to just wait. His response came back faster than I expected. Maybe 2 minutes later, he enthusiastically said yes and offered to buy me drinks. He said I should come see his room because he'd always wanted to show it to me. Then he added that I shouldn't tell my sister about our hangout, complete with a winky face. There it was, in writing, clear as day. My friends read it over my shoulder. One of them said that was disgusting. The other said my sister had to believe me now. I felt vindicated and disgusted at the same time. I walked back over to my sister and literally threw my phone at her. She caught it and looked at me confused. I told her sarcastically that I guess someone like me had a date to get ready for. She looked down at the screen. I watched her face change when she read the messages. First confusion, then realization, then anger, but this time the anger wasn't directed at me. Her face went pale. She read the messages again. Then she looked at me. For a second I thought she might actually apologize. But she didn't. She didn't say anything to me. She just walked straight over to where he was standing with my dad and uncle, talking about sports or whatever. She held up my phone in front of his face. I couldn't hear everything she said, but I heard enough. She was loud. People started staring. He tried to deny it at first, saying I must have misunderstood. Then he tried to make excuses, saying he was just joking around, that the texts were taken out of context. My dad stepped in when he realized what was happening. His whole attitude changed. He asked to see the phone. My sister showed him. My dad's face got hard. He told the boyfriend to leave. Now, the guy tried to argue, but my dad wasn't having it. He raised his voice and told him to get out. Other family members were watching now. My uncle stepped forward too. The boyfriend finally left, but not before shooting me an angry look, like this was somehow my fault. The party kinda died after that. People started leaving within the next hour. My sister disappeared somewhere. My mom came in and asked me if I was okay. I just nodded. They broke up that night. I could hear my sister on the phone with him from her room. She was crying and yelling. It went on for maybe 45 minutes. My sister came to my room later, around midnight. She didn't really apologize. She just kind of acknowledged what happened without actually talking about it. She said she should have believed me. That was it. No apology for calling me jealous or for the "someone like me" comment. No acknowledgement of how much she hurt me, just that one sentence. We never discussed it again after that day. My parents never brought it up either. It was like everyone just wanted to pretend it didn't happen. But something changed between us. My sister was quieter around me for months. She stopped making comments about my appearance or comparing us. She never said "someone like me" again either. And honestly, that was enough for me. Where I work, we're a group of less than 5 people, so everyone's contribution really matters. Or at least, it should. My co-worker joined about 6 months after me. At first, I thought maybe she was just learning the ropes. But over time, it became clear that this was just who she was. Every single group project, every team assignment, she'd find a way to do the absolute bare minimum. And I don't mean she'd do adequate work and call it a day. I mean she produced something so half-baked that the rest of us would have to scramble to fix it or redo it entirely. The thing is, in a small office like ours, you can't really hide. Everyone sees who's pulling their weight and who isn't. Our manager knows, my other co-workers know, we all know. But somehow she's managed to keep skating by, and the rest of us have been picking up the slack because we care about the quality of our work and meeting our deadlines. 3 weeks ago, we had our regular team meeting. We were dividing up tasks for a big project that was due at the end of the month. Our manager was going through the list, assigning different components to each of us. When he got to my coworker, he gave her a straightforward task, something that should take maybe a few hours of solid work. She looked up from her phone with this shocked expression and asked why she was being given this task. Like the very idea of her doing actual work was completely absurd. I don't know what came over me. 3 years of frustration just bubbled up and out of my mouth before I could stop it. I told her that she had to do something. The room went silent. I'll admit it wasn't my finest moment. It came out way snarkier than I intended. But after 3 years of watching everyone else carry her through project after project, something in me just snapped. She stared at me for a moment, her face turning red. Then she looked down at her laptop and didn't say another word for the rest of the meeting. That was 3 weeks ago, and she hasn't spoken to me since. Not a single word. And I don't just mean she's being cold or giving me short responses. I mean she's acting like I literally don't exist. If I say good morning, she looks right through me. If I try to hand her a document, she stares at the wall until I put it on her desk. If I ask her a direct question in a meeting, she addresses her answer to someone else like the words came from them instead of me. It's bizarre and uncomfortable, and it's making the entire office tense. For the first few days, I figured she just needed some space to cool off. I felt a little bad about the comment, even though I still thought her reaction was over the top. By the end of the second week, though, I decided I wasn't going to be the one to break first. This whole silent treatment thing was completely insane, and I wasn't going to apologize for stating an obvious truth just because she couldn't handle it. One of my other coworkers pulled her aside last week to talk to her about it. They told her that her behavior was making everyone uncomfortable and that she needed to find a way to move past this. You know what she said? She told them she needed more time because what I said had really hurt her feelings. More time. Like I committed some unforgivable offense by pointing out that she actually had to contribute to a team project. Meanwhile, the deadline for our project was getting closer and closer. 2 days ago, with only 2 days left until we had to present everything, I checked on the part she was supposed to complete. What I found was essentially 5 minutes of ChatGPT-style garbage. Unusable. Completely unusable. I brought it to my manager's attention because I wasn't about to let our entire project fail because of her incompetence. He looked at what she'd done, sighed, and reassigned it to me. So I spent the next 2 days redoing her entire portion on top of my own work, barely sleeping, living on coffee and stress. She found out yesterday that I'd redone her part. And now? Now she's even more upset. She's been telling anyone who will listen that I went behind her back, that I undermined her, that I'm making her look bad. I'm making her look bad. Like she needed any help with that. This morning, she sent an email to our manager with the rest of us copied. In it, she claimed that I've created a hostile work environment and that she doesn't feel safe working with someone who would sabotage her like this. Sabotage. Like saving our project from her incompetence is sabotage. But here's the thing that happened that she doesn't know about yet. Our manager called me into his office an hour ago. I thought I was about to get reprimanded for the whole situation. Instead, he thanked me for stepping up and finishing the work. Then he told me that he's been documenting her performance issues for months now, and that this situation was the final straw. He explained that he's starting the process to let her go. He also told me that the client we're presenting to tomorrow specifically requested me to lead the presentation after seeing the quality of the work I'd done. The work that included fixing everything she'd messed up. So tomorrow, I'll be presenting our project to the client. She'll be sitting in the meeting, still pretending I don't exist. And sometime next week, she'll be called into a meeting where her employment will be terminated. I still haven't apologized to her. And honestly, I don't think I will. I'm a 28-year-old woman living in a small 2-bedroom house I rent on the edge of town. I work as a nurse at a local hospital, pulling long shifts and trying to make ends meet. My grandfather lives about an hour away, and we've always been close. He's the kind of man who doesn't take nonsense from anyone, the type who grew up when handshakes meant something and people solved their own problems. He raised me for a few years when my parents were going through their divorce, so we have a special bond. About 3 months ago, this guy I knew from community college reached out to me. We've been friends back then, studied together, grabbed coffee sometimes. He seemed decent enough. He told me he'd lost his job and was about to get evicted, asked if he could crash on my couch for a couple weeks while he sorted things out. He said he just needed time to get back on his feet and find a new place. Against my better judgment, I said yes. I figured I was doing a good thing, helping someone when they were down. That was my first mistake. The first week was fine. He kept to himself, seemed to be looking for work, cleaned up after himself. But then week 2 rolled around and things started changing. He stopped looking for jobs, started sleeping until noon, left dishes everywhere. My grocery bill went from around $200 a month to nearly $400. He was eating everything I bought without ever offering to chip in. When I brought it up, he just shrugged and said he was having a rough time, that he'd pay me back once he got on his feet. 2 weeks turned into a month turned into 2. I kept asking him to contribute something, anything, maybe help with groceries, or at least clean the bathroom once in a while. I even asked him to just chip in $20 here and there. Nothing. He acted like I was being unreasonable for even asking. He started making comments about how I should be more supportive, that real friends help each other without keeping score. By month 3, I'd had enough. My house smelled like dirty socks and stale pizza. He'd taken over my living room completely. His stuff was everywhere: clothes, empty food containers, gaming equipment. He stayed up until 3 a.m. playing video games on my TV at full volume, making it impossible for me to sleep before my early shifts. My work performance was suffering because I was exhausted all the time. When I asked him to keep it down, he told me to stop being so uptight. He said I needed to relax and that I was acting like his mother. The final straw came last Tuesday. I got home from a brutal 12-hour shift around 8:30 p.m., exhausted, and found him eating the leftover pasta I'd saved for my dinner. I'd even put a note on the container asking him not to eat it. When I confronted him about it, he actually got angry at me. He asked what my problem was and said it was just food. I told him I wanted him to leave, that this wasn't working out and he needed to go. He acted shocked and asked if I was serious, bringing up everything we'd supposedly been through together and accusing me of just kicking him out. I told him we hadn't been through anything, that he'd been freeloading for 3 months and I wanted him out by the end of the week. I reminded him that he hadn't paid a single dollar toward rent, utilities, or groceries. He didn't say anything else that night, just looked at me with anger and went back to the couch. I thought maybe he'd actually start packing, start making arrangements, but the end of the week came and went. He was still there. When I told him he needed to leave immediately, he refused. He said he had nowhere to go and that I couldn't just throw him out. I made it clear I wasn't asking anymore and he needed to get out of my house. He looked at me and told me to make him. I started gathering his stuff, throwing it toward the door. He jumped up from the couch, got in my face, and started yelling about how ungrateful I was. When I didn't back down and kept throwing his things out, he punched me right in the jaw. I stumbled back, shocked, tasting blood in my mouth. My vision blurred for a second and I felt my lips split open. I called my grandfather immediately, crying, telling him what happened. My voice was shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. He told me to lock myself in my bedroom and that he'd be there soon. He said not to open the door for anyone but him. I did exactly that while my former friend pounded on the door, yelling about how I was overreacting and that he barely touched me. He kept saying I was being dramatic and that it was just a little push. I could hear him pacing around outside my door for what felt like forever. Grandpa arrived maybe 45 minutes later. I heard his truck pull up, heard his heavy boots on my porch. When I came out of my bedroom, I saw my ex-friend had locked himself in the bathroom. He must have heard my grandfather's voice and panicked. Grandpa took one look at my swollen jaw and bloody lip, and his expression went ice cold. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. He asked where the guy was. I told him he was in the bathroom and wouldn't come out. My grandfather nodded, walked back to his truck, and came back carrying his shotgun, the same one he'd had for 30 years. Before I could say anything, he walked straight to the bathroom door. He knocked once, hard enough to rattle the frame. He announced that the guy had 5 seconds to open the door. There was silence from inside. Then I heard my ex-friend say he wasn't coming out and that we couldn't make him. Grandpa started counting down from 5. His voice was calm but terrifying. 4, 3, 2. On one, my grandfather stepped back and kicked that door clean off its hinges. The crash was deafening. The door frame splintered and the door flew inward, slamming against the bathroom wall. My ex-friend was sitting on the toilet, pants around his ankles, face white as a sheet. Grandpa pointed both barrels directly at him. My grandfather told him that he'd hit his granddaughter, and now he had about 10 seconds to get out of the house before Grandpa forgot he was a law-abiding citizen. He added in a cold voice that if he ever heard the guy came within a mile of me again, they'd be finding pieces of him in 3 different counties. He asked if they were clear. The guy couldn't even pull his pants up properly. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip the fabric. He scrambled off that toilet, yanked them halfway up, and ran. Actually ran out of my house with his bare backside hanging out, not even stopping to grab his shoes. We watched him sprint down the street in his underwear, stumbling over his own feet. He tripped once on the sidewalk but got right back up and kept running. I haven't seen him since. Grandpa stayed the rest of the evening, helped me change the locks, and took me to file a police report. He also helped me gather up all the stuff my ex-friend had left behind and put it in garbage bags on the curb. The cops actually laughed when I told them about the bathroom incident. One officer told me my grandfather was a legend. They took photos of my injuries and said I could press charges if I wanted to. I filed for a restraining order the next day. My grandfather also made me promise to call him immediately if the guy ever tried to contact me again. He gave me a spare key to his house and told me I could stay with him anytime I needed to. The next few days I deep cleaned my entire house. I scrubbed every surface, washed all the linens, opened every window. I wanted to erase every trace of him. My co-workers at the hospital noticed my bruised jaw and I told them what happened. They were all supportive and one of them even offered to help me install a security camera at my front door. It took about a week before I finally felt safe in my own home again. I stopped jumping at every sound and could actually sleep through the night. My house is finally mine again. It's quiet, clean, peaceful. I got roped into being president of our homeowners association after showing up to a few meetings when they needed volunteers. Nobody else wanted to do it, and I figured how hard could it be? Turns out, not hard at all. When my wife and I bought our house back in 2003, the neighborhood was still pretty new. The whole development had been built in the late 90s, and the people who lived here wanted to keep things simple. We didn't want some corporate company breathing down our necks about the color of our mailboxes or whether our grass was half an inch too long. So we ran everything ourselves, kept the fees low, maintained the common areas, made sure the pool was clean and safe. That was it. We'd meet once a month, go over the budget, approve any maintenance requests, and that was pretty much it. Everyone was happy. The neighborhood looked nice, people paid their dues without complaining, and we all just lived our lives. Then she moved in. I'll call her Karen because that's exactly the type of person she was. She and her husband bought the house on Maple Court in the spring. I remember welcoming them at one of our meetings, thinking it would be nice to have some fresh faces in the community. It started at her very first meeting. She sat in the back row with a notebook and kept shaking her head at everything we discussed. When we opened the floor for comments, her hand shot up immediately. She launched into this whole speech about how concerned she was with how the association was being managed. I asked her what worried her. That's when she dropped the bomb that our pool was violating new county codes and would have to be closed immediately until we could bring it up to standard. Everyone in the room started murmuring. The pool was the centerpiece of our community. Kids used it all summer. We had pool parties and barbecues there. The thought of closing it sent everyone into a panic. I asked her to tell me exactly which codes we were violating. She said she could send me the documentation but insisted she knew what she was talking about and that this was serious. I spent the next 3 days calling the county, talking to inspectors, and researching every pool regulation I could find. Turns out there were no new codes. Our pool was completely fine. At the next meeting I made sure to announce this loudly and clearly so everyone knew she had been wrong. But Karen didn't stop. Every single month, she'd show up with a new claim. The playground equipment was unsafe. Our landscaping company wasn't licensed properly. The electrical work on our street lights was a fire hazard. Every single time I'd investigate, and every single time she was making things up or wildly exaggerating minor issues that didn't actually violate anything. I had to ask her directly why she kept bringing up these violations that didn't actually exist. She gave me this line about just trying to help and how the association was clearly overwhelmed and needed professional management. That's when it clicked. I did some digging and found out that Karen owned and operated a homeowners association management company. She wanted us to hire her firm to take over all our responsibilities, and she wanted somewhere between $700 and $1,000 every month to do it. When I presented this information to the board, we all had a good laugh. We were paying about $200 a month total for a bookkeeper to handle the finances. Everything else we did ourselves for free. Why would we pay someone 5 times that amount to do what we were already doing just fine? Karen realized her tactics at the meetings weren't working, so she changed strategies. My phone started blowing up with texts and emails, photos, dozens of them. Someone's trash can was still out on a Thursday. Someone had a small oil stain on their driveway. Someone's fence had a board that was slightly discolored. At first, I tried to be diplomatic, but then I noticed something in one of the photos. The angle showed that she had been standing in someone's front flower bed to get the shot. She was going onto people's property to take these pictures. I called her immediately. I told her we needed to talk about the photos she'd been sending me. She said she was just documenting violations and that someone had to do it. I explained the problem to her. She was going onto other people's property without permission. That was trespassing. She had no legal right to do that. She insisted she was just walking around the neighborhood. I pointed out that she was clearly going into their yards because I could tell from the angles of the photos. But I told her that I would take care of every single one of the violations she'd sent me. She seemed pleased and said that's what I should be doing. Then I dropped the hammer. I told her I would also be letting each of those homeowners know that she came onto their property and took these photos. I would forward them the exact pictures she sent me so they could see what she was doing. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. She said I couldn't do that. She insisted that wasn't how this worked. She said she was trying to help the community and didn't want to be seen as the person who was reporting people. I told her she should have thought about that before she started trespassing on private property and photographing people's homes without permission. I made it clear she couldn't have it both ways. She couldn't secretly report people and expect them not to know who did it. She called me completely unprofessional. I told her that what was unprofessional was lying at meetings, making up violations, and trespassing. I said if she wanted to be involved in this community, she needed to follow the same rules as everyone else. She hung up on me. I kept my word and contacted every single homeowner whose property she had photographed. Most of them were furious. A few even mentioned they'd seen her lurking around but hadn't thought much of it until now. That was 8 months ago. Karen never sent me another text. She never showed up to another meeting. I work as a lifeguard at this water park. You sit in your chair, scan the water, rotate positions every 30 minutes, take your breaks, and go home. The thing is, being a lifeguard isn't as relaxing as people think. You can't just zone out and enjoy the sun. Your eyes have to be on the water constantly, watching for any signs of distress. After a few hours of that intense focus, especially on a busy day, you start to feel it. Your eyes burn, your neck gets stiff, and any little disruption becomes 10 times more annoying than it would be normally. Yesterday was one of those days. I got to work at 10 in the morning, and by 11, my supervisor decided to run a drill. For those who don't know, supervisors randomly test us by pretending to be drowning victims. We call them rescues even though they're fake. It keeps us sharp, they say. So there I was scanning my section at the wave pool when I noticed someone floating face down for too long. I blew my whistle, jumped in with all my gear on, and pulled them to the edge. Turned out it was my supervisor. Great. I passed the test, but now I was soaking wet, cold from the wind hitting my damp uniform, and irritated that I had to change into my backup clothes during what should have been my regular rotation time. By early afternoon, they moved me to the lazy river. At least 5 of us were stationed there, all teenage girls around my age. The lazy river is usually the easiest post because people are just floating around on tubes, relaxing. Not much can go wrong. That's when these 2 boys showed up. They looked about 12 or 13, middle school age. One of them was clearly the ringleader. He started swimming up to each of us, asking for our names and phone numbers. He thought he was being smooth, making these ridiculous comments like we were supposed to be flattered or something. When he got to me, I'd already watched him bother 3 other guards. He asked for my name and tried to get my number. I told him that I was working and needed him to keep moving. He didn't give up easily, pressing me to just give him my name and maybe my number. I refused and reminded him that I was there to make sure people didn't drown, not to chat with kids. He tried one more line about me being pretty when I was serious. I shut that down fast, pointing out that I was 16 and he was like 12, and told him to stop. That seemed to embarrass him enough that he swam away. His friend, who'd been hanging back, followed him out of the water. The other guards and I exchanged looks and eye rolls, but we went back to watching the water. About 20 minutes passed. I was starting to relax again when I saw him come back into the lazy river. This time his friend stayed out sitting in one of the lounge chairs nearby, watching. That should have been my first clue something was up. The kid started swimming through the lazy river, but he wasn't just swimming normally. He kept dunking his head under the water, then popping back up, making these weird gargling, choking noises. He'd go under, come up sputtering, go under again. It looked exactly like someone who was struggling. The other guards he passed either didn't notice or assumed he was just playing around. A couple of them laughed, but I was done with this kid's nonsense. When he got to my section, still doing his little performance, I leaned forward in my chair and asked him directly if he was drowning. He looked right at me, water dripping down his face, and said he thought so. That was it. That was all I needed to hear. I blew my whistle hard, the sharp sound cutting through all the ambient noise of the water park. Before he could say anything else, I jumped in and grabbed him. I used the proper rescue technique, getting behind him, securing him with my arm across his chest, and pulling him to the edge of the river. The moment we reached the side and I started to pull him out, his whole attitude changed. He started yelling at me, demanding to know what I was doing, and telling me to let him go. I explained that he'd said he was drowning. He backtracked immediately, saying he was just kidding, and that he wasn't pretending to drown, just going in and out of the water. I pointed out that what he was doing looked exactly like drowning, and more importantly, he told me he was drowning when I asked. By now, other guards had come over, and a small crowd was forming. His face was bright red. His friend from the chair had walked over too, looking uncomfortable. The kid kept insisting I was insane and that he was just playing. I told him that you don't play like that at a pool, that it was literally rule number 1, and that faking drowning could get him kicked out. One of the food stand employees came over. The kid immediately ran to him, and I heard him say something about him being his brother. The older brother, who looked college-aged, listened to the kid's frantic explanation, then looked over at me. I explained what happened from my side. The brother's expression went from confused to angry, but not at me, at the kid. The brother pulled him aside and I couldn't hear exactly what was said, but the kid's body language said everything. Shoulders slumped, head down, the whole deal. After a minute, the brother practically shoved him back in my direction. The kid wouldn't look at me when he mumbled an apology for wasting my time. I told him not to fake emergencies because we take this stuff seriously. He said he knew and promised he wouldn't do it again. And he didn't. For the rest of my shift, I saw him a couple times from a distance, but he stayed far away from the lazy river and didn't bother any of the guards again. His friend avoided us too. When I told my supervisor what happened during our end-of-shift meeting, she actually laughed and said I handled it perfectly. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.